Intelligent High School Debate.
Hello and welcome back to Intelligence High School Debate. I'm your host, Seo Mi-sorang. Confidence. It's said that confidence is one of the most fundamental keys to success, yet many of us have trouble building it up. One surefire way to boost self-confidence is thorough preparation. And I hope that our students debating today are prepared for another round of fierce competition.
This tournament adapts the British parliamentary style. The debate consists of 4 teams of 2 speakers with 2 teams on either side of the case. Each speaker should deliver a 5-minute speech, and teams gain points individually even if on the same side. The first and last minute of each speech is protected from the point of informations.
Teams and sides are chosen by drawing lots, and our students will now randomly select a scroll that has their position written on it. First up are the students from Korean Minjok Leadership Academy, students Han Ye-ju and Park Jin-ha. Let's see what kind of scroll they select. They have chosen opening opposition. Next are Park Ju-won and Lee Si-won, students from Eunkwang Girls High School. Their scroll reads opening government, so going in direct opposition to the Korean Minjok Leadership Academy. Continuing on, Sangmoon High School students Park Dong-han and Choi Yoon-yong, closing government. And that of course means that students Kim Se-jin and Lee Jun-hwa from Dongducheon Foreign Language High School will be assuming the position closing opposition.
Mine is still in line with your small body miles to walk the ice. Therefore, I think that you can actually work. Not just ask their home, not just stay in the field, they already know, but they go out to other places.
You're going to actually have a rational state. We are no more state when you We believe that this kind of logic
They can be watched by other people, so
if it is not
even if there were problems within the privacy.
Now let's move on to our 3 judges. First of all, we have Professor Joshua Park. And also Professor Prauta Sorasusha. And finally, author Sandip Chulani. And last but not least, we have 50 audience judges right here in the studio, students from Kangso High School. Hello and welcome. Our audience judges, they will show their support for the speaker in the form of green lights. If they agree with the speaker, they will turn their lights on. And the number of green lights switched on will be reflected in the final results, so please make your decision carefully. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's check out the motion for today's debate.
The integration of digital information with a real-world environment, augmented reality. From science fiction pipe dream to practical reality, AR games are changing the very nature of gaming these days. However, augmented reality games mean augmented security risks. Is it really safe to play these games in public places, or should they be banned? This house would ban the play of augmented reality games in public places.
So should we ban the play of AR games in public? Let's hear the students. First up, the Prime Minister. Please step up to the podium. You may begin your speech at the sound of the beep.
I am the Prime Minister of this debate on the motion, this House would ban the play of augmented reality games in public places. Before going on to my constructive speech, I will be defining the motion. The government would like to define ban the play as allowing the installation, however, forbidding the play. We would like to define public place as an open area in which there are many people. We would also like to define augmented reality as the technology that superimposes a computer-generated image on a user's view of the real world. I, as the Prime Minister, will be going over how it is the government's role to protect citizens from harms and dangers that could happen, and our Deputy Prime will be going over the social harms that could happen from the play of AR games in public. On August 25th, 2016, a Japanese truck driver hit 2 pedestrians while distracted on his phone playing Pokemon Go, a highly popular AR game. One of the pedestrians died. The government supports the motion this House would ban the play of augmented reality games in public places because a fundamental role of the government is to protect its citizens from harms and dangers that could happen.
Madam,
Yes.
given that not everyone goes through that problem, can you say that this is an exclusive cause of augmented reality games?
I will be talking about the dangers of augmented reality games in augmented reality games. However, to talk about it briefly, augmented games are more dangerous than mobile games, which are already in use, because they are on the border of the virtual world and reality itself. And I will go on with my speech. I will explain the dangers of playing AR games in public places from two aspects, which is public places and AR games themselves. First of all, public places are different from your homes or your own backyard. A player is not familiar with the new surroundings, and therefore they do not know where the dent in the floor is, they do not know where the curb is, and therefore it can lead to many dangerous accidents. B, there are many existing people and obstacles that the player can bump into, trip over, or fall into. C, it is an open area, and therefore there is a possibility of the player straying off or wandering off into somewhere they have never been before. No, thank you. Second, I would like to talk about the dangers of AR games, which are different from mobile games. As I have talked briefly about before, it is more dangerous because mobile games only take place in the virtual world. However, AR games take place on the border of the virtual world and reality, and therefore the lines are blurred. The player's mind, no thank you, are absorbed into the virtual world while their body is still in reality. So it's basically like covering one's eyes and walking on the streets. As the example I gave, many deaths have occurred when a driver is distracted by playing an AR game. And this can be looked upon with a parallel example of drunk driving. In both cases, the AR game and alcohol creates illusions in the human brains and therefore distracts the player from thinking rationally and thinking clearly. Next, yes?
Why is that the unique characteristic of AR games? While if you're too absorbed in just only like ordinary games, you're also like forbidden to cross over a bump that is on the street.
As I have said before, it is on the border of the virtual world and the reality, and therefore the mind is still in the virtual world. However, the body needs to walk around. Have you ever played Pokemon Go before? You have to walk around in reality, however, still focusing on the virtual world and the screen. Therefore, it is different from mobile games that you only have to concentrate on the screen. Next, I will talk about how the company does not take responsibility for accidents that occur during the play of games, and therefore it is the government's role to protect its citizens. Niantic, the company that made Pokemon Go, has announced that they wouldn't take responsibility for players. Therefore, the government needs to take action, especially AR games, because they are only starting to be used and played. Just like cell phones, the more cell phones are used, the more texting and driving is causing deaths, and the more it is being regulated. Therefore, we need to prevent any further harms and dangers that could be caused by AR games. To sum up, I would like to support the motion this House would ban the play of augmented reality games in public places because it is the government's role to protect citizens from harms and dangers, and clearly, AR games are a harm and danger. Thank you.
Okay, you may take your seat. That was the Prime Minister arguing for the motion that government should ban the play of AR games in public. So how successful was she in persuading our audience? Let's find out. I'm seeing almost half of the lights. 28 out of 50, so roughly a bit over half of our audience agree with the Prime Minister. Can the Leader of Opposition beat this? It's your turn.
Madam Speaker, the only one simple liner that came from the opposing team was that it was dangerous and it was harmful, and thus the government should ban it. So I'm going to prove to you in my speech why this simple logic cannot simply be a justification for the government to step in and ban something. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, there are many products that are harmful, classified as harmful. First of all, it can directly cause harm on oneself, like alcohol, for example. But this is not a big justification for the government to step in and ban alcohol, right? Because the government basically says, because it can cause potential harm if you misuse it and actually overuse it, you can actually control yourself and actually make it a healthy habit of yours. And secondly, where it harms others, right? Directly harm the third party and the bystanders, like smoking, for example. However, we're going to prove to you in my speech why augmented reality games are different from these smoking kind of cases, just because of the fact that the users are not the direct cause of these accidents, just like smoking, right? By smoking itself, it causes harms to the bystanders, whereas augmented games are based on the users, right? How these users use the game, basically. So
Ma'am?
So yes.
You gave us an example of alcohol. However, alcohol is also drunk driving is also banned. Also,
Madam Speaker, about that point, there was a third rebuttal to your side. You talked about driving, right? Using your phone during driving is banned in 36 states of the United States already, so this is basically not relevant to this debate. If you want to talk about driving, then maybe we're going to have another debate about driving. But this case, if we're talking about walking, we believe that there's a clear difference while using your phone during driving. So let's move on to our arguments, which also self-rebuts their case. So we're going to speak to you first of all about the justification, why augmented reality games are not enough, the reasons are not enough to be banned. And then secondly, we're going to move on to explain the benefits, right? So first of all, augmented reality games, they talked about how harms were potential. So in order to make you, provide you with a better logic, we actually, went to the internet and searched the death tracks, we tracked on the death rates, right? 14 deaths and 54 injuries, right? So we categorized this based on 3 aspects. First of all, there were people who just died, and coincidentally, they were playing that game while they died. For example, people who were shoot while playing the game, not because of the game itself, but they were just walking the street and they were shot. And then secondly, there were also people who had heart attacks, but basically it's self-evident that this is not relevant because the cause of the accident itself is not based on the game, right? And secondly, self-harm, where people prioritized to catch that Pokemon, to catch, for example, Pikachu over there, and so they didn't mind, getting hurt during the action, right? Catching that thing. Also, if you talk about this self-harm, government restriction is not allowed, government restriction is not to an extent banning, right? As I talked about alcohol, right? We don't ban alcohol just because it's self-harmful. Secondly, individuals have the right to weigh out and prioritize what they're going to do, right? If they prioritize catching that Pikachu, we say, okay, go on, but don't do that too far, right? But we don't ban it. And thirdly, this is the main cause, right? Main cause that we're talking about, hitting pedestrians, bumping into people, and being struck by vehicles. Basically, Madam Speaker, these cases are different, right, from smoking, for example, because these kind of accidents are caused not because of the Pokemon Go itself, not because of these games themselves, but rather these games are caused by the misuse and unwary behaviors of the individuals themselves, right? So individuals basically bump into these people, and seeing the aspect how only 20% of these people were bumping in, we can conclude that this game does not, genetically make you bump into people, right? It's basically how people misuse this, right? So we're going to talk to you why responsibility, if the responsibility basically is not on the users, not on the games, but when the responsibility is on the users, why is this not enough for you to go on, government to intervene and ban it? Because first of all, there's such a low potential of these kind of things happening. We actually see a lot of more economic benefits that we would talk about in our second argument, rather if you ban these kind of things. Soccer, for example, in London, it causes immense amount of vandalism, right? People go crazy over soccer, but that's not enough justification for us to say, because people might go crazy, you have to not play soccer from now on. It's not enough justification. But secondly, because the arbitrary threshold is so unclear, right? Because basically how destructive the game is not a criteria or not the kind of main cause of why these games causes accident, right? Rather, the main cause is the arbitrary negligence of individuals, right? So this differs from individuals and varies upon different cases, and thus this is not enough reason for you to say, let's ban this. And our last argument is about the benefits, right? We told you how Pokemon Go ruses immense amount of economic benefits. It creates $23 billion of Japan and Nintendo companies only. And if you look at these kind of rates, economic benefits, we clearly see that the benefits outweigh the harms. And if you also think about how Pokemon Go arouses people to go out and interact with people, and because of these steps, if you have played this game, you have to go to these monuments and landmarks to find items, for example, and this actually allows you to spend money on different kind of cases, which is very uniquely beneficial because this not only gives the money to these companies. Thank you.
Okay, that was the leader of opposition arguing against the motion, so arguing that government should not ban the play of AR games in public. Okay, so let's see how many of our audience judges agree. 23 out of 50, so a little bit less than the Prime Minister. So far, the opening government is leading in the total number of lights on. So let's see if the Deputy Prime Minister can continue this momentum. Please step up to the podium.
Mr. Madam Speaker, since we are all just children or students, I would like to ask adjudicators and the MC, when you drink and drive, actually it's illegal, but when you drink or when you actually or sometimes smoke, you become immersed in that activity. When you drink and when you cannot actually control your intake amount, you cannot really control yourself. Why? Because even though you really want to control yourself and your mental and your emotion, your body cannot handle that because it's alcohol. It contains elements that actually controls your emotion and brain, which means that if you once immersed in that kind of element or in that kind of activity like drunk driving or marijuana or whatnot, you become unsensitive and you become immersed in that kind of activity. Therefore you cannot control yourself. It's like I think this is a parallel example that we can actually give into augmented reality games like Pokemon Go. You cannot control yourself even though you want to because you're so immersed in that kind of Pokemon Go game, catching Pikachus or any different characters. You become so absorbed in that game that you cannot actually even differentiate the reality and the virtual society that you're actually playing the game in. Therefore, the government definitely has an obligation to actually opt in this phenomenon and this kind of tragedy and to actually protect citizens from having potential harms and accidents, even like going to deaths. Moving on to my rebuttals before moving on to my substantive arguments, my first clash is about exclusiveness of AR games compared to other mobile games and other activities. They talked about how we can actually ban other mobile games if you think that there was absorbing in its problem. However, I think that the mobile games, except computer mobile games or phone mobile games, are different from actually AR games because, as I mentioned in my introduction, they do have function and very unique function and characteristics that make the users to be absorbed in that kind of game because we can actually see the real picture of the monitor. For example, if you go to Coex Mall, you can actually see the picture of the Coex Mall via your small mobile phone device. Therefore, I think that you can actually be really absorbed in that kind of game. Therefore, you cannot really make rational decisions once you actually opt into this game. Secondly, they talked about the logic of how smoking and drinking driving does not smoking and drinking drive it, but the very point that our lovely Prime Minister was trying to argue was that it's not just a problem of smoking or taking drugs. It's actually a problem about after they intake those drugs or after they intake those alcohol, they move out. And this is the very, very important characteristic of the Pokemon Go. When you drive and when you move, we actually require rationality, a very, very sensitive sense of your brain and your body movement. So we have to be very careful when you drive or when you move in public places, when open areas where you're not actually very familiar with it. So therefore, the point is that after you drink, it's not just about your drinking, but the point is that after you drink, you move and you drive. That's the problem when the problem starts and begins. Therefore, I believe that because Pokemon Go actually gives you the possibility and actually it requires you to make a movement, like literally walking and running. Therefore, I believe that it is. Yes, sir.
Isn't the being drunken and playing the AR game different issue because drinking makes your makes problems in the inside, and the AR is the exclusive one.
So what I want to talk about is that the both thing. Yeah, it is actually definitely a different matter because something is food and something is game. But it actually ultimately, at the end of the day, it gives your body an emotion, a phenomenon, and an illusion that it actually makes your body to think that you're doing in something. You're not really in a reality and you're in a virtual world. Therefore, both of the elements actually makes you to feel you're in a virtual world. Therefore, you cannot actually make different rational choices or actions or lifestyle choices. Second, they talked about how they do have, lastly, they talked about how the people of the users have a right to prioritize their own happiness. However, there is harm principle in democracy, how I will actually demonstrate in my last argument. When a certain person's action actually imposes harm to other individual, the government can actually opt into the system and make the people to stop that action. So it nicely leads to my third argument, which is about the social harms and how it triggers further crimes. Number one, it's about the direct harms that it imposes to society. It actually infringes privacy. AR games actually monitor of your phone shows the real space of the world. Therefore, you can see the body of other people. And because it looks like a camera monitor, it definitely gives a room for users to actually take hidden camera photos of other people. And taking pictures without the person's consent is definitely clear crime. Secondly, I want to talk about how it risks cyber security because you will make.
Would you like to continue or would you like to end there?
Can I have 10 more seconds?
Okay.
Thank you. Secondly, I want to talk about how it risks cybersecurity because you are going to use public cyber network when you go out. And lastly, I want to talk about how indirect harms, about the indirect harm because it will going to give you more, because of the characteristics. There is also an example that United States teen boy actually broke into a stranger's house and actually did robbing and many crimes. Thank you.
Okay. All right, that was the Deputy Prime Minister arguing for the motion and in detailing why government should ban the play of AR games in public. She mentioned that AR games are more dangerous than other electronic games because they are inherently more engrossing. How many of our audience judges agree with the Deputy Prime Minister? 19. So a bit less than the Prime Minister, but still good nonetheless. Okay, Deputy Leader of Opposition, it's now your turn.
If you look at most of the stories and episodes of harm that opening government gives you, they are generally caused by how an individual utilizes that particular device. That is, the individual or whatever teen you're talking about can choose to break into someone's house because that person wants to catch the Pokemon, or that person can choose not to. And there are plenty of people in the world who choose to responsibly utilize games rather than break into someone's house and break a law that already exists. Given that that's the case, we don't think that opening government gives you enough a causal relationship between games and banning and whether people will misuse them or not. So as the Deputy Leader of Opposition, I'm going to talk about two things. First of all, I'm going to talk about the principle and why opening government does not have enough justification to ban this game. And secondly, I'm going to extend on the impacts that our Leader of Opposition already gave you. So firstly, let's talk about principle. Their Prime Minister basically focused on self-harm and how it harms individuals. But if you look at the characteristic of self-harm, unlike social harm, is something that is subjective. That is, the government cannot decide for you how much or to what extent you are harming yourself. No, thank you. We think in those particular instances, it depends on the individual's calculus and the individual's prioritization as to how they can utilize that game and use it in a responsible way. But secondly, they also talked about social harm. And if you look at many of the harms and injuries and deaths that are related to Pokemon Go or augmented reality, there are various contexts to various deaths and injuries that happen. Just because augmented reality was somehow related to it or somehow part of the incident does not prove a causation as to why. Furthermore, we want to tell you that because of the fact that not everyone goes through it, we think that it does mean that not all instances of augmented reality will cause somehow a problem for these individuals. Furthermore, we think even if a problem happens, we think it's better to ask the individual to be responsible for these actions. We think there are already mechanisms for breaking laws or hurting other people during that process. Yes?
There are actions that are regulated by the government that do not have the possibility to affect all members, such as drunk driving. Some people will get away with it, some people will be safe with it. However, it is dangerous and that's why it is banned.
We don't think that the potentials of harm for augmented reality is as comparable to drunk driving. And I'm going to extend this by saying that there's no causal relationship and there's no particular exclusiveness. Because no matter what substance of alcohol you consume, or whether you use a cigarette or not, inevitably there will be a chemical and biological harm upon your body and other people around you. But the difference about augmented reality is that just because you use it, that doesn't mean that that's going to harm everyone. It depends on how you utilize that game. That's the fundamental difference we're going to draw between those two. We don't think your exclusiveness stands. But moreover, we think that when they talk about how you can be less aware of what's happening around you, we don't think that that's the case. Because if you look at things like mobile games on a comparison, we think these are things that draw much more attention only to that particular game rather than being aware of what is reality around you. Augmented reality tells you about what reality looks like around you. These are the fundamental differences that say that mobile games are just as harmful. We don't really buy your logic there. But furthermore, let's talk about impacts in this particular case. We think this is problematic for two reasons. First of all, we want to talk about the economy. We think there are exclusive benefits for augmented reality in the sense that people who play these games do not just stay in their homes or do not just stay in the fields that they already know, but they go out to other places. We think there are already stores that utilize this kinds of of mobility. We think there are already local places that try to utilize this and make money out of it, try to sell to these kinds of people. In those particular instances, we think this is an exclusive benefit that augmented reality games bring you. But secondly, let's also talk about joy. We think there are many people, as most of us have probably played Pokemon Go, and most of us probably aren't dead. We think there are many people who use these games in a very responsible way for one's particular joy. At the point that their side tries to limit the choice of these people to play these kinds of games, we think it imposes a harm on every other individual who has been responsibly using that game, only on the expense of those who have been harmed as a result of that. And we think even if there comes some kind of damage, such as a death or an injury, because the media always goes viral about these particular instances, we think as society progresses, people will be compelled to be more careful themselves. We think this is an incentivizer for individuals to be careful, both on principle and impact. We believe we take this debate home. Thank you.
All right, that was the deputy leader of opposition arguing against the motion, so arguing that government should not ban the play of AR games in public. Time to find out how many of our 50 audience judges agree with the speaker. 21. Now the magic number was 24 to beat the opening government team, but with a score of 21, currently the opening government is in the lead. And that concludes the debate for the first half of the debate today. And time to ask the judges on how they saw the debate so far. And for that, we're going to ask Professor Prauta Sorasusha all the way from Thailand.
So, opening government, I thought you guys did a very good job in setting up and being very clear about where you wanted to place this and the dangers and what the current status quo looked like. What you both needed to do a little bit more, especially earlier in the debate, was to talk a little bit more about exactly why AR was so much similar to drunk driving and how that really affected perception and why it was particularly important, especially when you were in public.
So I'll be commenting on opening opposition. So I felt that one of the things that was done well strategically was it was good to question the exclusivity of the harm of virtual reality or augmented reality games and the causal link between augmented reality games and the harms that the opening government was talking about. And it's probably also good to bring in the individual choice element, which happened in both of the speeches.
So to summarize the opening half as a whole as to what we've heard, I have effectively three clashes, right? The first one is whether or not harm is an inevitability. And I think both sides have discussed this. Obviously, the second clash that follows up, and we had this, so the flow of the debate so far has been really good, is whether or not the harm is actually large enough to warrant a ban. One suggestion I would give to both sides is try to actually not only play by analogies, but show us why those analogies are actually relevant to the debate as well.
Thank you for your comments. That was author Sandip Chilani, who flew in all the way from Hong Kong just for intelligence. All right, let's move on to the second half of our debate. And for that, I would like to ask the member of government to step up to the podium.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable judges. Before I move on to my argument and extension, I'd like to point out tackle some of the points that I have spotted from the opening opposition. So basically what they're saying is by banning the augmented reality games, it's going to harm the society as a whole. And the victims and the cases of when it comes to cases where people get harmed by these AR games, they aren't exactly getting harmed by the game itself, but rather other problems, such as they were just walking around and got shot. But this is an act that is clearly denying all of the cases that happened throughout history since the development of the AR games. You see, in Japan, there were 76 traffic accidents within 4 days of the release of Pokemon Go, and including a case where a 9-year-old kid was hit by a truck and killed, and the truck driver was playing AR games. And in the UK, total 105 crimes using Pokemon Go occurred within 5 weeks of the release of this Pokemon Go game. This crime includes robbery and theft. And in Taiwan, 861 traffic accidents occur within 66 hours of release of the Pokemon Go. So what you're basically saying is that the development of the AR games is not actually the reason why they get traffic accidents and or get harm, but this is an action that is clearly denying what is happening throughout.
information?
No. Throughout the society. And they also mentioned that the AR games only harm the people who play the game themselves, and as seen in these cases of traffic accidents and such, it is basically not true. And you admitted that these playing AR games could lead to addiction. No. To addiction, game addictions. However, these addictions could harm the society and the public because people who do have addictions can have illusions and unable to make the rational choices, and as a result harming the public. And you also mentioned that there are economical harm that could come by banning the AR games in public places. However, economy is all about technology, and you did not explain the correlation between technology and the games itself. And moving on to my extension, we first believe that by banning the playing augmented reality games in public places could harm the economy in the first place, unlike what the opening opposition has mentioned. And this is regarding sponsorships of these game companies. For example, McDonald's, which is sponsoring the game Pokemon Go at the moment. And to thank the contribution and the fundraising things that they've done for the company that is developing, that has made the Pokemon Go itself, and as a reward or a thank you note for the contribution they've made, the Pokemon Go company is basically trying to make McDonald's into a permanent Pokestop, which is basically where Pokemons appear. And by making this, people would gather in such places, but however, McDonald's are usually in places where there are in usually cities, because cities are basically where a lot of people are, and this could cause, by only sponsoring things that are around the city, could harm benefit by creating an inequality gap between the rich and the poor. And moving on to my second extension, which is about the privacy issue, which also the opening government has mentioned. Basically, what's the difference between AR and VR games is that VR don't include GPS when they play such games. However, AR games, we need to connect to the GPS itself to play games so that they could send images of things and items in your screen, whichever device that you're using. And by doing such, basically someone would just know where you are and come get you. That's basically what's going to happen. And mentioned by the famous movie director Oliver Stone, this phenomenon is explained as a new era of infiltrating someone's privacy, and there is an actual phenomenon to refer to this, which is known to be the surveillance capitalism, which is discussed throughout the society all around the world at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, that was a member of government arguing for the motion and outlining why government should ban the play of AR games in public. So let's check out the audience response. I'm not seeing as many as the previous speakers, 11 out of 50. Okay, let's see if our next speaker can beat this score. Member of opposition, please step up to the podium.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Before I move on to making the two arguments that this closing opposition have prepared, I would like to make refusals to the arguments that the government side first announced. So firstly, they have argued that the playing of augmented reality games in public places can be dangerous because there can be related crimes while playing these games. However, the examples that they have just provided to us were all examples of crimes in private places. They have said that there can be burglaries and robberies in the private homes of people. However, these are not public places, and these are not related to the motion that we are discussing right now. And also, the benefit of playing reality games in public places are that people have CCTVs and the government watching them around them, and there are so many people crowded in this area that people can see what is going on around them. This can be beneficial because these players can see what is going on around them, and also this also leads to the point where players can also see what is going on around them, so they can not only just focus. They're not only focusing on their phones, but they are focusing on what is around them as well. So there is less danger than the potential than the mobile games that they have given examples to. Yes, ma'am.
I think we have clearly explained to you how there is immersement happening because of the exclusive characteristic of these AR games.
They can be immersed in these games. However, the difference between the mobile games and AR games is that they can see what is going on around them. They know that they know what their surroundings is like, so they know the difference between what is reality and what is not real. So moving on to the arguments that this house would like to present, we will present you with the 2 E's. So the first one is the essence of these games. So firstly, augmented reality games allow players to have contact and interaction between players. These games try to make sure that players be engaged with other players, and this can therefore lead to solving problems related to the isolation issues in the society. Yes, sir?
That is the biggest reason why the privacy issue is coming upon towards the debate today.
Well, for the privacy issues, they can be watched by other people. So even if there were problems within the privacy, people can watch what is going on around them. To also back up, the problem with the isolation in this society is that people don't have real contact with each other. So by players cooperating with each other, they are sharing the same interests, and they can therefore lead to a beneficial society where there is cooperative work between other people in their real life. Also, the health issues, there can be health issues when playing other games, but with the augmented reality games, players can exercise and roam around to different places in the nature, and there can be and therefore this can lead to solving problems related to health issues. The other 2 E's that we want to present is the effects of playing augmented reality games. By playing these games, players can participate in reality, and they can also give potential to development of these games in the future. The augmented reality is not only practiced in games, but they can only be developed into further scientific developments in the future, where they can be used in places like NASA and the military army. So they can carry out experiments, or they can see what will happen in the future without actually conducting any dangers in the real situation. Another effect that we want to provide is the economic revenue for playing these games. When players go into these areas, they can be exposed to the shop owners and the economic places around them, so they can buy products, and this can increase the local society and the local economics of this place. Also, this can also further lead into tourism increases in certain areas, and they can also lead to sales in traditional markets increasing. This is all provided in the example of Sokcho, where the Pokemon game was first enforced. So therefore, these are the reasons why this house believes that the augmented reality games in public should not be banned. Thank you.
Okay, that was the member of opposition arguing against the motion, so arguing that government should not ban the play of AR games in public. So let's see how many lights are switched on. 35. So almost triple the number, a bit over triple the number that the member of government received. Okay, government whip, please step up to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, just before moving on to our debate, we're going to actually mention two questions in this debate because we've been looking into a wishy-washy standard which is coming from the opposition side in this debate. First question is that is AR quite different within the VR that is actually in the status quo? The question is yes, because actually the opposition side has been kept on mentioning and is actually quite agreeing towards the fact that AR is different with VR. That is the biggest reason why they've been talking about the economical developments and about the economical benefits that AR technology is going to bring out. We're going to say that AR technology is actually the technology which is differentiating within the VR because the VR technology is something that is 100% fake, while on the other hand, AR is actually based within the mixture of reality and actually the fake stuff. So when it comes to society, we can actually acknowledge that AR technology, AR games actually cause upon more addiction towards in the status quo. That is the biggest reason why we're saying that in this debate that we should ban the usage of AR games in public places because we believe that the usage of AR games in public places is same as drunk driving because it causes illusion towards your own side, and not only that, it also causes you to become irrational because games, if you look into these kind of cases, that these kind of games actually cause up an addiction, and when it comes to a state of being addicted, you're going to actually have a rational state compared towards a state when you were not. So we believe that this kind of logic which they've been actually kept on mentioning is actually quite illogical in the first place. And second of all, moving on to the place about that, we believe that the biggest reason why we're trying to ban AR games is because in the society there are no such kind of regulations in the fields of AR games. This is the biggest reason why this is differentiated with also drunk driving and AR usage. Because we see that in the society, there are no such kind of logic or there's no such kind of laws which are actually regulating the people who are using or who are actually having this kind of problems related towards the privacy problems. So we believe that these are the biggest main reasons why you believe that the usage of AR games is quite totally different in the status quo within the issue regards of drunk driving or smoking, and that is the biggest reason why we believe that we should ban this. And now moving on to rebuttals which our previous speaker has been talking about the health issues. Well, we believe that yes, these kind of health issues are very important, and they've been actually mentioning about the economical benefits. However, we believe that first towards the health issue, we believe that yes, health is quite important, of course, because it directly relates to your life. But we see that in the status quo, because the usage of AR is directly actually having the threat of killing you. So we believe that when it comes to a standard of taking care of your health and taking care of your own life, we believe that the value of taking care of your health is actually taking care of your life is actually going to win it. And second of all, moving on to the economical part, yes, our previous speaker has been telling you about these Pokestops of giving you an example of Pokemon Go, and we can see that Pokemon stops are actually going to be the biggest features, which is eventually going to lead into the biggest gap between the rich and the poor. Because we see that these companies such as McDonald's are eventually going to investigate towards only in the cities. So we believe that the example of Sokchul, which they've been giving on, is eventually happening in the United States of America and towards the whole world. And what is happening is that the countries that are actually having more companies located in their own kinds of states are eventually developing within a very high, but the states which don't have are eventually having a much more big. So we believe that the economical part that they've been mentioning about is eventually going to fail out, and this is directly related. Then this part is actually directly relating towards our extension, towards in our part, because we believe that the example of McDonald's is directly just showing you how this kind of the usage of AR is eventually going to lead into harming the whole society. And we believe that when it comes to actually manipulating the whole society, we can see that these kind of AR is actually affecting the AR games are actually affecting the economy, and it's actually affecting the own lives of your own lives of the people. So we believe that in the fields of these kind of own surveillance capitalism parts, we see that the gap between the rich and the poor between the states are eventually going to get bigger and bigger. And we believe that our fundamental goal in the society of actually diminishing the gap between the rich and the poor is eventually going to get weaker on, and it's going to be actually impossible when you actually put in these kind of AR games, and which when it comes to a situation when we don't ban these AR games into society. And now moving on to our second extension, which actually the opposition side has been just mistaking of it. They actually never rebutted towards our part of the privacy part. Towards the parts of privacy, because we've been keep on mentioning you from the opening government side towards the closing government side about the issue of privacy. That the privacy is actually the biggest reason why we're trying to ban these kind of people. We're trying to ban AR games, because these AR games actually are using these GPS systems, and these GPS systems are able to retract, or people are actually able to retract where these people are going. And so these kind of cases of actually killing these people by retracting these GPS or actually getting their own information by actually retracting these GPS process are currently happening on. However, since the opposition side has actually totally failed to actually rebut towards it, and even though it comes from the last speaker, we believe that it's too late. We believe that that's the biggest reason why we take this debate, and that is the biggest reason why we contributed in this debate within the fields of privacy and within the fields of economy and within the fields of the human's life. And that is why I'm proud to oppose.
Okay, that was the government whip, the last speaker from the government bench, and in detailing why government should ban the play of AR games in public spaces. Okay, let's see the audience response. I'm seeing quite a few lights on, 33 out of 50. That puts the total for the closing government team at 44 out of 100. Okay, time for the last speaker of the debate, the opposition whip.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the opposition whip. And firstly, I want to make a rebuttal to the government's arguments. Firstly, they said that the government has the duty to guard their own citizens from the AR games, but they didn't cover the dangers happening in the private places. They only said about the public places, which means that government doesn't have the duty to guard the citizens that are in the danger in the private places. And also they said they equalized about getting drunk and driving. However, this is kind of a different issue because getting drunken happens inside the body as it acts chemically to the person, whereas the AR games causes the exclusive reasons to the people to get into it. However, we can get out of it easily from the AR games by putting away the smartphones, but getting drunken, it is impossible to get out without having time. And also, they didn't give the evidence. Yes, madam.
Under what ground are you arguing that these AR games are easy to opt out for users?
I was going to say that later, so I will continue the rebuttal. And they didn't. Yes.
You stated that we only provided evidence for the public dangers. However, the motion that we are debating about is about the public use of AR games, and that is why we were only mentioning public dangers.
But you said about the government duty to protect the citizens, and you only mentioned about the public places. Government's duty to guard the citizens is to guard every citizen in every places, and I thought that was not right. And they didn't give the evidence about the accidents about the hitting the pedestrians by playing the AR games. What about the parks? Parks are also public places, and people cannot play the AR games and drive into the parks.
Sir?
Sorry. Now I'm going to wrap up our opposition's arguments. And our opposition's arguments was about the AR games doesn't cause the direct problems to people. And also they said about the economic benefits that outweigh the harms. And also, we also said about the principle. And the problem is about how the people use it, not because of the potential of the AR games. It's problem of how people utilize it. And also, we said about the two E's. The first E was about the essence of the AR games. Humans are social animals, and we need to contact and interact with people. Sorry. We need to interact with people, and like this kind of opportunities, we can interact with people. And AR games can also help people to interact with others. For example, in the US, many people gather in the parks and play together with strangers that they don't know, but share the same interest. And this can also,
This directly relates towards the problem of privacy, which we've been previously mentioning on. And there hasn't still been any kind of rebuttal coming towards the regards of the issue of privacy.
So I'll say that later. And the second essence was about the health issues. And the health issue, there are many children who eats overconsumption of sugar and fattening foods, and they just stare at the computers in their homes and stay at home without getting outside and playing with their friends, because in almost every houses they have the computers. However, this kind of AR games can actually induce the children to get out of their house instead of staring at their computers. Yes.
Basically, what you're saying is that by eating a lot of foods and staying inside of home playing games, that their health is going to get worse. However, by getting outside playing AR games, they were more risk of getting hit by a car or such. So that is not entirely related to health, I think.
but that doesn't mean that every children are going to get hit by the car when they get with their AR games when they get out of their homes. I just wanted to say that it can help the children to get more healthy by running around, because Pokemon Go's require you to run around for a few minutes. And our second E was about the effectiveness, as it can help the local economies to get activated, and also it can also help the AR technology to be advanced. If it is not in the public places, this kind of development of AR games will be impossible. So far we have discussed about this house would ban the play of augmented reality games in public places, as we consider that the government's arguments are not enough to justify banning the games in the public places. Thank you.
Okay, that was the final speaker of the debate, the opposition whip, arguing against the motion, arguing that government should not ban the play of AR games in public spaces. Time now for the green lights. I see almost all the green lights have turned on, and the number is 34. So a bit over 60, almost 70% of our audience judges agree with the opposition whip. All right. Before we ask the adjudicators for their opinion, let me ask the audience judges for their opinion. How did you see the debate so far? Okay, let's see the count. So it is 20 for the government and 30 against. So it looks like the opposition bench did a better job at persuading our audience. Before I announce the results, let's ask our judges on how they saw the debate so far. Professor Joshua Park?
I did feel that there were some strategic elements to the closing government team that I would praise. So for one, I did feel that closing government team tried to respond directly to a lot of the arguments that came from the opposition side. And secondly, I did feel that they tried to differentiate themselves from the opening team by focusing upon a different element in the debate. So for example, while opening government was focusing more upon the harms themselves of, for example, the dangers of being in an augmented reality game, closing government focused more upon the privacy issues and brought that as the advantage that they wanted to push.
So in terms of the closing opposition, as a team, you guys did really well in terms of showing out your extensions, right? So it was very catchy the way you said it. It's the two E's. We have the essence and the effect. And obviously this was repeated by the opposition whip. So as an adjudicator, and I'm sure as the audience members, it was very easy to follow. It was very easy to remember.
But in conclusion, we think that both of you guys did a really good job with the comparative, and we're trying to further some of those extensions. But on both sides of the house, you really do need to focus a little bit more on the differentiation from the top half and really establishing why the points you brought up were unique and incredibly important, that the debate really needs to move on from what was happening in top half.
Thank you for your insight. All right, it's finally time for me to announce the top two teams of today's episode. As I mentioned earlier, these two top teams will go on to the semi-final round of the tournament for their chance to represent Korea in the Northeast Asia Debating Championship. So, those two teams are the Korean Minjok Leadership Academy and Eunkwang Girls High School. Congratulations! You guys look really happy. How do you feel?
Actually, it was not my best. So I was very sorry for my teammate, but I'm so happy that we are actually to take this debate home.
Right.
Thank you.
And how do you think Park Ji-won performed?
She did well. I don't
did
know
well?
why she was so worrying.
So she's just being a bit tough on herself, maybe?
I hope that we can do better next time.
All right. And you guys from the Korean Minjok Leadership Academy, how do you feel?
I'm very excited for the next round, and I think all of us did a very good job, and yeah, like compliments on all of us.
That's right.
I It was very interesting for me to debate a British parliamentary debate for the first time, and I'm very happy for this experience. And I hope we can all learn something from this experience.
All right, that does it for this week's Intelligence High School debate. We'll be back with more fierce debates and more fierce topics coming up, so please do join us again next week. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.